Hey everybody, Melissa here, and today we're going to be talking about self-study strategies. If you're out there in the chat, why don't you let me know, where are you being quarantined? Because it seems like these days we're pretty much all hanging out together online because we're all very much in our homes, doing school, doing study, thinking about AP exams, all that good stuff. So I'm gonna let me share my screen and get things going there. Now you can see what you need to be seeing. Awesome. Make that the focus screen there. Now you'll be able to see everything a little bit better. All right, so today I want to talk a little about self-study strategies. Just as a heads up for you, Fiveable is running a lot of extra live reviews for upcoming AP classes. So no matter what subject you are here for, we've got a lot of streams that are happening. We have our regular schedule of streams that are all free and great, but we also have some additional streams that have been added to our calendar because a lot of us are at home. And we have the opportunity to be online streaming. We have the opportunity to be online attending streams. And this is a really great resource. I see a question already. I'm going to look at it. All right. Hey, if anybody else can hear me, I've got my audio. Let's see. Jada's asking if you can hear me. So if you can hear me, can you just give me a wave or something in the chat? Let me know that you can hear. Okay, so some folks are hearing me. So it sounds like, Jada, the issue may be on your end. So you might reload the window or something like that. I've had that happen occasionally as well. Hopefully you'll get it back together. Awesome. Thanks, folks in the chat. Let me know that you can hear me, that somebody's out there. If you want to stay in touch with Fiveable and see kind of what's going on, following us on the socials is a really great way to know what's coming up. I know that we have the Game of Fives happening all day today. The trivia in all different subjects that's going on. In fact, there may be a trivia running right now. I know there was one a couple of hours ago in AP World, which is the subject I teach. There's trivia later tonight for World again. I saw a whole big list that Amanda sent out. So following us on the socials is going to get you connected to any of the streams that are happening. Today, I want to talk about just a few things as you're putting together for yourself your self-study plan. A lot of you have relied on teachers to give you structure and planning up to this point. And that's awesome. You have some amazing AP teachers out there in all the different subjects. And maybe some of them are still able to give you that structure. You might already have transitioned to distance learning for your school or your district. I know for my school, we haven't transitioned to distance learning yet. We've needed a little time to put things in place in a really reasonable and equitable way for all of our students. So you may be in the boat where you're like, I have nothing from my teacher and I don't know if I ever will. Either way, it's not going to be the same as being in class today. You're going to have to get creative. You're going to have to complete your learning, and that can be a little bit scary. The good news, though, is that you have all of the skills that we're going to talk about today. You have been practicing them all year long in your various subjects, in whatever your school situation has looked like and does look like now. So we're just going to break it down and talk about what you need to do, especially in light of the fact that the College Board has made some changes to the AP exam, which they just announced today. And I am by no means an expert on what those changes mean for different subjects or for you personally. I'm not even sure what they mean for my students yet. We're still waiting for some of the details. But, right, it means that this time that we have, even with those changes to the exam format, the exam content, the exam date, even with all of that, we still need to be studying and planning and knowing what's going on. Hang on just a sec. I've got a kiddo that needs to talk to me. I need to do this lesson and then I will be quiet. So just go back to your room. Okay, bud, I will be as quiet as I can. Thank you for letting me know. Yeah, work at home parent. That's what's happening here. So hopefully this will be all right. All right, I'm going to scoot the computer a little closer to my face. Sorry if that makes it weird, but it allows me to talk a little quieter and still be picked up by my microphone. So plan for today. I want to talk about habits. What kind of study habits can be really helpful to you. I want to talk about structuring your time. I want to talk about what to study, because I think that's the thing that's freaking the most people out right now is like, what am I supposed to study? How do I know if I'm studying the right things? I don't have a teacher. What am I supposed to do? Let's talk about that. Talk about activities and resources that can be really helpful for you. And then about creating that consistency that will make this habit worthwhile. At any point during the stream, feel free to pop in the chat with questions, comments, feedback, anything that's helpful. You can use the ask a question function if you want to be sure that I notice your question. Sometimes the chat moves a little fast for me, although you guys are pretty quiet this afternoon, so maybe I'll be able to keep up. All right, so some good habits for self-study. Self-study is all about creating and maintaining good habits. I'll talk more about specific steps to habit formation because I did a little research as I was getting ready for this stream. But for right now, I want to talk about the elements of your study habits in particular. So number one is schedule or structure. And I think for a lot of us who are doing learning at home for maybe the first time, this is one of the places where we need to do a little bit of work. The more you can plan in advance for when, where, and how you will study, the more likely you are to actually do it. So creating a structure or a schedule for yourself is going to be really valuable. Number two are choosing effective study activities, because how you study is almost as important as what you study. The what is super important, but how can make a really big difference in the success of your study plan. So thinking about that. And then the big one, number three, is consistency. The key to all of this, you can have the best schedule in the world, but if you don't stick to it, it's not really going to work. So the key to all of this is really sticking to your plan. You have to actually show up and do the work in order to make it happen. And I'm confident if you're even here wondering about self-study habits, right, this is something that I know you can do. So let's dive in a little bit. So the first thing, right, this is going to be a lot of stuff you already know. There's a lot of good research out there about schedules, but most of us aren't very good at following it. So I want to talk about the things we already know about making a good schedule so that we remind ourselves of those things and can start to plan something that's going to work for us. So now that you have the chance to set your own schedule, potentially, depending on your particular environment, you can think about what works best, both in kind of the research, the general ideas, and also what works best for you. So a healthy schedule, I've got just a little bullet point outline here of what a healthy schedule includes. A healthy schedule should include time each day for studying. Or if you're going to take your break, right, you're going to say, I'm going to study Monday through Friday and take my weekends off. That's a reasonable choice to make, as long as it's planned, right? Saying, oh, I'm going to study at some point is less effective, but saying, I'm going to study at 10 a.m. every weekday, and either Saturday or Sunday, I'm going to give myself some flexibility. That's a better, more likely to be successful kind of a plan. A healthy schedule should also break your studying into smallish chunks of time, right? You don't want to plan on a 5-hour marathon study schedule. I know that many of you out there are fully capable of doing that. You have the intensity of focus, you have the will, and you are driven. In fact, if you been in a public school up to this kind of quarantine point, you probably spent 6 hours a day consistently studying, and then time on top of that outside of school doing your homework. But for self-study, research shows that's not the most effective plan. More effective would be to take shorter chunks of time and be really intentional about how you use that time. And a healthy schedule should include time each day that you set aside to not study, which I know sounds bonkers. I'm like, what? The teacher's telling us not to study, but you should include things in your day that aren't studying. And we'll talk about kind of how some of that can be really important for making your study successful. But, right, include time in your schedule for your other responsibilities. Are you caring for younger siblings? Are you responsible for grandparents? Do you need to get some exercise? I do. right? Are you planning for sleep? Are you putting time each day for things that you really enjoy? And that could be video games or non-school related internet time or social media time, right? Those are things that are part of our lives. And I'm not telling you to give them up completely, but to think about how they fit into your schedule. A couple of additional points to consider, and then I do see a question in the chat that I want to address. If you're studying multiple subjects, if you have multiple subjects you're trying to keep up on, multiple AP exams that you're considering working towards, start with the most challenging ones, the earliest in your day, so that they actually get done. Because if you're anything like me, you might start with the easy one, finish it, get to the hard one, and be like, oh, I don't want to do this anymore. I'm tired of studying. And then you never get to that really hard subject. So think about that, be intentional about that. In terms of time of day, pick a time of day when you are really alert and awake and prepared to study. It sounds like there's going to be flexibility in time for what time of day you take your AP exams. So studying at the same time of day as your exam isn't necessarily something you have to worry about anymore. So pick a time of day where it's actually going to be effective for you. And then come back to your studying, right? More than once. Maybe read or do one kind of studying for 20 or 30 minutes in the morning, work a couple practice problems after lunch, and then correct your work before you go to bed, right? Spreading it out, distributed studying is what it's called in the research, can be a really effective tool. So as you're thinking about your schedule, the more of these things you can plan for intentionally, the better off you're going to be. Your teachers spend a lot of time thinking this through and planning it out for you in your school day. And now you get to take on that for yourself and make it work for you. Allie in the chat is asking, how should I know when to review old material that I've already learned? I've seen videos about space studying, reviewing material a day, a week, or a month from initially learning the specific subject. Allie, that's an awesome question. Here, let me pull up my next slide because it might give me a framework to answer your question. So there's a study cycle. And this is based on work by Frank Christ. And so I want to talk through the study cycle, and Allie, hopefully I can kind of address your question and think about this. So the study cycle, and the way that it typically works, is you would want to start by previewing material. If you are at a place like my students are, where we covered everything that's going to be on the modified AP exam before our school was shut down. So my students are responsible for reviewing material. So previewing isn't so much about new material, but maybe about previewing the particular study task that you're going to do for that day. So you're going to, if you're looking at a review book, or if you're going back to your textbook, you can skim the headings and subheadings. You could look at pictures. You can look at vocabulary from your syllabus, your unit outline, or from a textbook chapter. But basically, you're trying to prime your brain so that when you see or recognize these things, or when you see these words or pictures or ideas come up again in your studying, they're familiar. You're basically tricking your brain into thinking that you're remembering something rather than learning it for the first time. Allie, if you're having trouble seeing the slides, try refreshing the window. Crowdcast sometimes does weird stuff, and I'm sure that about 1 million people are crowdcasting out in the world right now. So we may be a little bit laggy here, but the slide that I've got up is just showing kind of a cycle picture as I talk through it. If you can hear me, you're probably in good shape for getting an answer to this. The next step, right, in regular studying would be going to class. We're not going to class right now. We are reading, we are watching videos, we are doing study activities. So preview the activity, think about, okay, what is it that I'm trying to study here? What is it that I'm trying to review here? What is it, right? Thinking about what's my key vocab, those kinds of things. Then actually go do the thing. Watch the video, read the text, run the practice problems. Then after you've done that, you want to review your notes. Now, ideally, we want there to be a gap between reading or watching and reviewing the notes that you've created. You may be at a point where you're not reviewing, or where you're not reading and watching a lot of new content. You're really just going back through notes that you already have. So you're kind of skipping steps 1 and 2, and we're working through steps 3 through 5 in this study cycle. But you want to review your notes, and I'm going to talk about this more a little bit later. But as you're reviewing, right, think about how can you review actively with a highlighter or a different colored pen in hand to mark the key details in your notes, to annotate your notes with questions, comments, or connections between different topics. This is the point where you want to identify for yourself the places where you're stuck, or you can't figure something out, or you can't remember something, and you want to either ask for help or look things up that you don't understand and then write those clarifications into your notes. Studying in this model often refers to practice. So this is where, and we're going to talk about practice strategies about actually working problems, right? If you're studying for AP Calculus, you want to work some problems based on the content that you're trying to work through. If you are in AP Chemistry, again, working problems is probably really relevant. If you're in an AP History, practice and study might be writing short answer questions or doing a document analysis, those kinds of things. But doing that practice gives you a chance to apply what you've learned. And when you're practicing, my encouragement to you is to try your practice without your notes first. Challenge yourself to see where you're at. Because if you totally blow it and you can't do it at all, or it's an absolute disaster, no one's going to see you. No one's going to know, right? This is self-study. So you have the freedom to just practice something and to see where you're at. Then you can look back at your notes if you need them. Right? So it's kind of this incremental step process. You always want to check yourself, check your work, check your answer against your notes from your practice. If your notes aren't telling you for sure whether you're right or wrong, go back to your textbook, go back to your source, get someone else to check your work and give you some feedback. This is a place where, right, we can leverage some of our technology and reach out to teachers if they're able to respond online, or to classmates or friends, reaching out to folks, say, hey, this was my answer. Help me walk through whether I'm right. Then you can, based on your practice, add additional annotations to your notes about anything you learned by practicing that you hadn't already known, right? This is the cycle that you're going through anytime you're learning anything. If you can go through this cycle and as your self-study and think about, am I doing these different steps at some point in my self-study, then you probably have a good self-study plan. There's no one perfect self-study plan that everybody should follow. It's really about how do you structure and make your self-study work for you, right? We're leveraging the tools that we have to make them work for us. So big question that Allie was asking was how do I know when to review old material? I think, Allie, it really depends on how far you got in your course. Your teacher or your AP coordinator may be reaching out to you at some point in the next couple of days to let you know kind of where your class fits in with what the College Board has just announced about your subject. For my students, they could start back at the beginning and spend their weeks leading up to the exam dates, which we still don't know when those are, but they could spend that time going back from our Unit 1 all the way up through the last unit that the exam will cover. And so they could break it up and you could just go back through. For some people, that's not the most effective strategy. Studying the most recent material is more valuable because that recent material includes connections to previous material. So I can't necessarily, Allie, tell you when you should review old material. The key, though, is that you want to be bringing that new material up and embedding it in any new content that you're learning as well, to try and make it work as much as you can. All right. The thing that weighs so heavily on my students most of the time when we talk about this in terms of in-class studying is, what should I be studying? How do I know if I'm studying the right things? And this is the really stressful part, right? This is the part that makes self-study so scary because you don't have a teacher guiding you through and letting you know what's up. So there's a couple of things that you could be looking at. Content-wise, right? Every subject has specified content that you should be learning. One place that you could start are the relevant textbook sections for the material that your exam is going to be covering. So for my students in AP World History, right? The textbook chapters, they're all dated. So my students could go back and use the textbook to help them kind of manage the different topics, because they can look at the dates on a chapter and say, yes, this falls within the window of what I'm supposed to be knowing. That may be more challenging for other subjects, but that's one place where you can start. And if you don't have a textbook, right, maybe you have a review book or a resource book. And again, there should be some clues in those books that help you know like which units or sections or topics you should be studying. Any teacher materials that you've received up to this point in class may be really valuable for you. If your teacher has a course outline, a syllabus, my students got unit outline cover pages from me for every unit that we studied. That is going to include content about what you're supposed to cover in the course. And your teacher may have provided those to you, may be willing to provide those things to you. So that's something that you can consider for knowing what content is most relevant. There's something called a course and exam description, and every AP course has one of these published by the College Board. Now, this document is written for teachers. It's not written for students, and it's not in particularly student-friendly language. But I want to mention that it exists because if you are in a place where you're not sure if your textbook is covering what it's supposed to be covering, your teacher is really unavailable for whatever reasons due to their own circumstances or internet connections or rules in school districts about what teachers can and can't do in terms of contacting students during the quarantine. And I know there's a lot of differences nationwide about that. This course and exam description covers the broad outline of what is supposed to be on the exam so that teachers know what to teach from. And if you are just stuck looking for something to organize your thinking, that document exists and you are welcome to use it. It is free and available to the public. There's nothing in that document that's like super secret, teachers only. So you could look for that. Along with content, I would encourage you to think about the skills, right, that you need to be practicing. Hopefully you've had a chance to practice most of the major skills in your AP subject when you were still in class. Continuing that practice is critically important along with learning and reviewing the content itself. Pretty much every AP exam I know of includes multiple choice questions. And I don't know whether the exams will include multiple choice sections, but they may. So if you're going to practice multiple choice questions, right, consider timed practice, making sure that, because these AP exams, even though there's flexibility about them, my understanding is they will still be timed exams. So can you complete questions in a given amount of time? Think about AP style practice. For example, in the histories that I teach, all of the questions are stimulus-based. They have a text or a visual to go along with the question. So practicing questions that look like that. Think about any free response items. And again, the specific requirements will vary depending on your subject, but practicing those free response items in a timed setting would be a really good idea. And then any analysis, problem solving, or other sub skills that could show up in multiple parts of the test. For example, in the histories, there's a skill about sourcing or thinking about the author behind a text. And that could come up in multiple choice. It can come up in short answer, and it can come up in the long essay questions. So for my students, practicing looking at sources and thinking about the author behind them is a way to practice skills without having to write a whole essay. Before I see another question in my question bin, and I'll look at that in just a second. But before I do, I want to give you this encouragement. Don't be afraid of failing while you're studying. You may feel like you are not progressing, like you are writing just the most garbage answers to anything that you practice. And sometimes that's the only way to learn. Try again. Try again, try again. Practice for practice sake, believe it or not, is an effective study strategy. You may not be developing every part of your skills, but you're going to be developing something, because when you look at it, you say, wow, this is really bad. You can then think, how could I make it better the next time I do it? And you can give yourself that feedback loop that allows you to progress and go forward. So don't be discouraged if it doesn't feel like you're doing very well. And don't be discouraged if there's a lack of feedback, right? You don't have that daily contact with your teacher, and that can be really discouraging and really distressing. Reach out to people who can help you, right? Reach out to us on Fiveable, reach out to your peers, reach out to your teacher if you have that contact info, and ask for feedback. But also know that you are capable of analyzing and correcting and improving your own work. It's not always going to feel good, and you're not always going to know in the moment that you're getting better. But research shows that practice for practice sake, especially on things like free response items, is truly an effective strategy. So you are doing something that works, even if it doesn't feel like it. All right. So got a question here. I saw the announcement that said that tests were free response only. I suck at writing. How do I study this? Oh, Madison, I feel you. So I missed that in the announcement. What I saw in the announcement was that they would announce what kind of questions would be included on the exams. And you may be right that they're FRQ only, and I just missed that. It may also vary subject by subject. They said they'll let us know by April 3rd. So there's a little bit of an unknown in your question in that I don't know for sure. I suck at writing. I'll just kind of reiterate what I just said, which is practice. Practice is the way to get better at it. And that feels so counterintuitive. Like if I'm bad at it, I'm just going to be practicing badly. But there's a lot of different ways to be bad at something, and a lot of them can be overcome by practice. For example, one of the things my students struggle with on a routine basis is finishing on time. Right? They say to me, Mrs. L, I suck at writing. I can never finish one of these on time. Okay, great. That's really good to know, because you can practice with a timer, and you simply set yourself a timer and you say, I'm going to complete my answer. And I'm not going to worry about whether it's a great answer and whether everything's correct about it yet. I'm going to just write to time. And if that's the thing that's really stressing you out, that's the thing that you can practice. If the thing that's stressing you out is, I never have enough detail in my answers, I really struggle with including details, right? So you find yourself a practice problem, you write the answer without your notes, then you go back to your notes and you say, oh, what details or answers, details or examples, there we go, that's the word I was thinking of, could I include in my answer to make it stronger? And you've done some self-correction, you've done some self-study. Also look for opportunities from your teacher or your class or here at Fiveable to do practice writing, right? There may be some streams where you get to do some practice writing. There may be some, I know on the Fiveable community, we've been uploading short answer questions for AP World, and students are getting teacher feedback from those. So there's lots of different tools you can use to practice writing. Allie's asking me what subject do I teach. I mentioned it before. I teach AP World. So I can't speak a lot to what the exams necessarily look like outside of the histories, because all the histories are very similar in their exams. But I know a little bit about what's happening with some of the other subjects. And I don't know what's going on. Madison's asking, is Fiveable going to surprise us with art history? I have no idea. I know we've been talking about art history for months, and I don't teach it, so it's not something I can offer as a stream. So I have no idea. I guess keep an eye out. You'll never know what Amanda's going to pull out of her magical hat sometime. All right. So once you've thought about like, what are you going to study? What skills, what content are you going to study? It's about choosing strategies. Like, how are you going to study? My advice to students is always the more active that you can be mentally, if not always physically, while you're learning, the better that you're going to learn. So doing something to study is always better than just, I'm going to review my notes. And I put that in air quotes, and that's not really fair, because sometimes reviewing your notes and just looking at them is all you can manage on a given day. And I don't want to discredit that strategy. I do want to say that there are probably more effective strategies. And so again, I would say choose strategies that work well for you, choose strategies that challenge you a little bit, especially challenging you to practice skills that you're not very good at yet. Boop. Oh, I've got another question here in my question box that says, you may have talked about this, but should we still follow what's on our calendar when it came to homework? That is really going to depend on your subject and your teacher. And I think I recognize the name here. If you are in Mr. Underland's class at my school, pause on the calendar. We are going to give you updates as soon as we have a full grasp of what we need to do. We are meeting about that. And if you are in other subjects and other schools, I would say worry less about a calendar and more about matching up your studying with what's going to be on your AP exam. Again, hopefully your teachers are able to communicate that with you as soon as possible. If not, updates from Fiveable in your core subject areas are going to give you some of that information. Fiveable has done a great job for me of breaking down like all of the different announcements coming from the College Board and changing every 2 seconds. So that's really been a great resource even for me as a teacher. And that can be a really great resource for you. I would worry less about a calendar, worry less about homework, worry more at this point about getting yourself to a place where you feel confident on your free response skills. And again, we don't know the specifics of what free response means. We don't know if that means short answer or if that means long essay or if that means both, heaven forbid. We don't know. And because we don't know, we can continue practicing all of the skills. Because we don't know yet, we should focus on doing as much as we can to be ready for whatever it ends up looking like and staying tuned for that information. I hate answering questions with we don't know, and I know this is really frustrating for a lot of you, so I really appreciate that you're hanging with me and that you're asking these questions. I wish I could give you all of the specifics and all of the details, and we are working towards that as much as we can. And we just ask your continued patience. And I say we, meaning like literally every AP teacher in the country. This is something that is hard for us, just like it's hard for you. So as you're thinking about studying, what are you going to do to study? And originally, when I built this slide, I had like good strategies and bad strategies. Then I was like, nah, like different people study different ways. So I broke it instead into passive and active strategies. So the passive strategies aren't necessarily bad strategies. They're just a little less active. And again, if this is all you can do or all you want to do, these are good strategies. So watching a video lesson, you're here right now doing that. It's what we pride ourselves on here at Fiveable, right? These are sometimes a little bit more passive, but they can be really good and effective ways to study. Hang on, I've got a small one here with a small problem. So I'm going to check on that and then I'll give you the next one. What's up? Yep, got yourself a hole in your pants. We will deal with that later. I need you to go back up to your room and I'll come check on you in a few minutes. He's been playing hard today. Another kind of more passive strategy is reading the text, right? Initial reading, especially if you're reading without notes, that's a fairly passive strategy. Reviewing your notes, just reading back through them is another fairly passive strategy. Active strategies that I came up with include taking notes, right? Writing, typing, doing something a little bit with your body to process the material that you're taking in and remember it. That's going to help. Asking questions is an effective, active study strategy. So all of you who've asked questions here in this stream, you are awesome and amazing. Keep asking those questions. If you, if you are in contact with your teacher, ask your teacher questions. If you are on Fiveable Community, ask questions on Fiveable Community and we will get you answers. Use our intercom system, right? Lots of ways to ask questions. Work problems. If you are in a STEM class, right, you're most likely doing problems, even in terms of like free response questions, working problems, showing your work, explaining your work, that kind of thing is an active study strategy. Annotating your notes. I've talked about this a little bit already, but the idea of highlighting or underlining, circling key ideas within your notes, and then writing annotations of like, how does this relate? What does this mean? What questions do I have about it? If you are in a classroom where your teachers have required Cornell notes, right? That's what that little questions column is really good for. Use that space. Summarize your notes. Allie was asking about like reviewing old material and spacing out your studying. One thing that you could do, Allie, in any subject is to go back through your notes and write summaries. Like, what is the key idea? What is the big thing I should take away from this section of learning or reading, or from this lecture that I listened to 4 months ago or however long ago? Doing that summarizing work forces you to think about the content, forces you to put it into your own words, which actually helps you to remember it better. Anytime you can be involved in discussion with other people, if you are quarantined with family members, perhaps they get roped into being your study group, right? You're going to teach them what they need to know about particular content, and then you're going to ask them to ask you questions and you explain it, right? Any kind of discussion, online, live, FaceTime, Google Hangouts, whatever you've got, use that strategy. And then just remember to practice, practice, practice. Okay, what did I miss? What other study strategies would help you really engage with text that you can do at home? What did I miss? Anything? I'm sure I missed a lot. It's a quiet chat today. That's okay. If you have other ideas, feel free to drop them in the chat and I will shout them out and make sure that other people get the advantage of your brilliance, as well as, me being here doing what I do. Remaking your notes. So that's not one that I often recommend because I always assume that my students are in school 6 hours a day and then trying to study at home. But if you are at home and have time, if you have notes that were garbage when you took them, right? They're hard to read, they're hard to understand, you didn't do a very good job on them in the first place, and you want to remake those notes, that could give you a chance to reorganize, restructure them in a way that makes more sense to you. If you took notes in a Cornell notes or outline format and you really hate that style of note-taking and you want to remake them into a thought web, that's a really valid study strategy. I wouldn't remake them just for the sake of neatness unless you're struggling to reread your own handwriting. But if you want to remake them and create them in a new way, that's definitely a good way to go. All right, Allie's dropping some knowledge and a link to the College Board. The College Board exam is now only 45 minutes for AP World, focusing on units 1 through 6 online. And the dates for the exam still to be determined. There'll be 2 dates that you can take the exam. And that's true, broadly speaking, for most AP subjects. The idea of 45 minutes, the idea of 2 test dates, 2 options for taking the exam. The time periods or units that you're covering varies by subject. So thanks for dropping that link if people want to go read more details about that. Like I said at the beginning, I prepped this lesson at the beginning of this week before we knew all of this from the College Board. So I haven't been able to do all of that research yet today. In fact, part of my daily schedule is to go in and make some new plans for my students once this stream is finished. So thanks, Allie. Appreciate that. Resources to help you study. Right? If you've got a textbook, you can use that to help you study. If you've got a review book, you can use that to help you study. In my opinion, the best review books are the ones that include content overviews and opportunities for practice, like practice questions. Those are great. So I'm not going to recommend a particular brand, but right, anytime you have content overview and practice questions, you at least have some kind of structure to work with, which is really great. If you're ordering a book, it may take a little while to come. Amazon's not shipping very quickly on what they're calling non-essential items. But if you can get a book, choose one that's going to give you practice questions, practice problems with some kind of annotated answer key. If Amazon's shipping is too slow for you, you might call your local bookstore and see if they're doing local deliveries. I know that in order to stay in business, some bookstores are actually offering local deliveries in some areas, and that might be something that you could take advantage of. For video content, right? Choose sources that you can trust. That's really, really key. I'm going to plug Fiveable partly because I work here, but also because I know that the people Fiveable hires have met some pretty high standards in terms of their teaching ability, in terms of their experience with the course content. So anything that you're getting here at Fiveable is going to be really solid. There are other great sources out there, right? There's a million review videos out on YouTube, and I'll probably be making some in the next couple of weeks for my students as well. And some of them are good and some of them are not so good. So really think about, right, do you know what experience this person has? If your teacher who you love and think is awesome is making review content, that's content that you can trust. If it's someone else's teacher, maybe check and see, how you know that they're legit. A lot of folks are, some folks are a little less so. If there's a live stream, right, feel free to ask questions. People asked me earlier, like, hey, what do you teach, Mrs. L? I teach AP World. So that's something that I can give to you. As you're studying from books and from videos, right, take notes on your own paper, so you can review the content without having to search and reread. If you are marking sections in a text, mark them with like a flag so you can come back to those pages and you don't have to reread the entire book. For discussion, again, think about real time, think about discussion boards and those practice problems that are in your textbook, that are in your review book, that are being posted on Fiveable. There are some free resources on the College Board website, and they seem to be putting out more and more all the time. AP Classroom, if your teacher's got things unlocked, or if the College Board just free unlocks everything for everyone all the time, like it sounds like they might do, there's going to be a lot of stuff available for you to practice with. So make sure that you're doing that. And also, if these tests are 45 minutes long, set aside 45-minute chunks of time for some of that time to practice, because it's a different timing than we've been practicing as students all along. So the more you can practice timed, I think the better off you're going to be. Okay. Oh, consistency. For all of this structure, all of these resources, all of this content, this only works when you are consistent. And I'm saying when, not if, because I believe in all of you. I don't know all of you, although it turns out I know a couple of you out there. But consistency is the key, and it's really all about building habits. Every habit has 3 components. You may have seen this in a lesson someplace called the habit loop. But the idea here is that every lesson has, every habit that you have, or any habit you wish to create, needs a cue, right? What signal, in this case for your studying, what signal is going to help you know that it's time to start studying? You could put an alarm on your phone. You could put a Post-it on the mirror so when you wake up first thing in the morning, you could say, my cue is going to be, I finish breakfast and then I study. So it's not about like certain hour of the day, but about like the routine, the pattern of my day. So that if I decide to sleep in, I'm not late on my studying. I'm going to sleep in, I'm going to eat breakfast, and then the next thing I'm going to do is study, or whatever works for you. Once you get the cue that tells you what to study, the routine, right? And this is why I've been saying that active tasks are really valuable, because you want to have some sort of concrete thing you are doing to study, because that way you know when you're actually doing it and you know when you're finished. Studying needs to have an endpoint, because if you just kind of study throughout the day in a lackadaisical way, it's really easy to not actually do any studying. And then last thing, for the habit loop, right? The cue, the routine, and the reward. The habits that we build for ourselves have some kind of reward. We get something out of it that we want. And maybe you are a person who gets that good, warm, fuzzy feeling of knowing that you can check a box off your checklist or that you're that much closer to being successful in the exam. I am not that person. And if you are, that's fantastic. There should be more people like you who are just intrinsically, beautifully motivated. Some of the rest of us need literal, actual rewards. And this is going to feel maybe a little juvenile, but I want to throw it out there as a suggestion. What can you give yourself, right? Are you motivated by sticker charts? You're high school students. You're probably way above sticker charts, but I know that they're used for little kids because they're really successful. Being able to see the stickers, go across the page is really rewarding for people. If you are motivated by glittery stickers, make yourself a sticker chart. If you are motivated by food, some research tells us that's not the most healthy thing to reward ourselves with, but this is short term, right? We're not talking about like the rest of your life. We're talking about self-study for the AP exam in this crazy COVID-19 spring. If you want to give yourself a piece of chocolate every time you study, I say go for it. If you want to watch an episode of your favorite Netflix show every time you finish studying, I say go for it. If you want to play a level of a video game every time you finish studying something, fine, do it, right? Whatever is going to be motivating and rewarding to you. Because if the reward is motivating, you're going to want to do the routine when the cue tells you that you should. When that phone alarm goes off, you're going to be like, oh yeah, I got to study because then I get this thing that I really like. That's like the habit loop that we want to build for ourselves. So you're going to have to take the responsibility of thinking through what's going to make that work best for you. And here's where I start to get really radical. I've got 2 crazy radical suggestions for you. Number 1 is to be ruthless. Cut out all possible distractions during your study time. I want you to turn off your phone. I know I sound like your mom, but really, I want you to turn off your phone while you're studying, unless you're watching your video on your phone because that's the only internet access you have. Can you silence your notifications, right? What can you do to effectively turn off the phone part of your phone if you need your phone to study? But if you don't, or if you're using a textbook or if you're practicing on your computer for a timed test, put your phone in another room. The notifications will be there when you're done studying. And if you're studying in chunks, 30, 45 minutes, it's not that long to be away from your phone. Shut it in a drawer, put it in another room. Close the door to the room where you are studying so that you're not being interrupted. I've been interrupted twice during this stream. I should have gone in a different room where I could close the door and lock it and be by myself. But right, like put yourself in a place where you can focus on what you need to do. Help yourself in that way. Quit any other programs. Close all the other tabs on your computer. You can save the tabs and come back to them later. I'm a person who has like 15 tabs open at a time. Even right now, you just can't see them because I'm not sharing them all. But right, if I was really seriously studying, I would minimize the window with all of my like fun tabs and open a brand new window that just has my studying in it. And I've literally done that when I need to study or work on a lesson that's really important. So be ruthless. We're going to be testing from home. So you're going to be allowed to listen to music while you're testing, which is new. I was going to say turn off the music while you're studying, but choose the level of volume that is reasonable for you. I think there's going to be some limitations on like what you can listen to, whether you can have headphones in, that sort of stuff. It's going to be different from our original testing environment, but I think there's going to be some restrictions on that even for the AP exam it's totally a guess. I have no idea. But so you might practice studying in a quiet space and see if you can make that work. But my first radical suggestion is to be ruthless. My second radical suggestion is to create accountability. It's scary to ask who can help you stay accountable to your plan, but accountability builds consistency. And accountability means being vulnerable. It means that someone else is going to know whether you're really doing the thing that you said you would do. It means if you aren't doing it or if you can't do it, you might have to admit that to another person and ask for their help. So there's a vulnerability to accountability, and that's scary, but it's also really empowering, because if there is someone in your life who can be really positive for you and cheer you on, and that kind of encouraging accountability rather than the punitive accountability, having that person who, like, you're not just doing it for yourself, now you're doing it for yourself and for that person who's going to cheer you on. You want to make them proud. You want to do something that's going to build your relationship together. If your teacher is someone who can cheer you on and help you be accountable, if your teacher is only allowed to assign supplemental enrichment things, you're not allowed to be graded for the work that you're doing, turn it in anyway. That would be a great way to be accountable, because your teacher wants you to succeed. And I say that knowing that some of my students or my partner teacher's students are listening right now. If we give assignments, whether they're graded or not, turn them in. We can be your accountability partners. If you don't have that resource at all, will your parents help you be accountable? If your parents are, off working and you can't do that, who could help you? Do you and a friend want to say, hey, from 2 to 3 p.m., we're going to turn off our phones. We're going to not talk to each other. And then at 3 o'clock, I'm going to text you the 4 things that I did to study. You could totally do that. And I bet you have a friend who would help you with that. So I want to encourage you radically to help you stay consistent. And the last thing that I have, before I just open it up for any questions people have, is I want to just say, hey, you got to create your own plan. You can do this. Fiveable is going to be here to help support you, but you've got this. You have the skills, you have the habits, you have the drive. The fact that you showed up to this stream tells me that you care enough to make this happen, to make this work. So what questions do you have for me in terms of creating your own plan or doing self-study that I could offer to give you some encouragement, to give you a pep talk, whatever it's going to take? I'll take questions in the ask a question function or in the chat. Anything you've got for me, I'll hang out for a few more minutes and answer anything that comes in. Allie, always coming through clutch for me with questions and info. I love it. Allie's question is, how long should breaks between studying be? If you were learning new content, if for some reason, Allie, your class hadn't covered, say, Unit 6, you might want a longer chunk of time between learning new content and reviewing it again, because your brain needs some processing time for that. Because you're reviewing content, ideally, that you have already learned, I want to suggest that breaks between studying could be as short as a couple of hours, or as long as, you study once, you study in the mornings and then you wait till the next day and you study again the next day for a little bit of time. The idea of breaks is about just moving away from it, so you're not just getting stressed out by all of the studying, but also it allows your brain to move your memories into deeper long-term storage, is I think some of the brain research behind that. So I would say breaks should be at least a couple of hours long if you're going to do things throughout the day, or as long as 24 hours is totally fine. Sweet boy, I need you to go back to your room and I'll come talk to you in a few minutes. I'm almost done with the kids here. Okay, and I'll come talk to you in a couple minutes. Go on up. All right, I've got another question from Madison. Any advice if you have to look after or help teach a younger sibling while trying to get work done? I feel you. I mean, clearly, I am trying to get work done with young people in my house. This might be a time where you enlist your parents in helping you create that plan. It might mean, if it's possible, for you to wake up early before your parents leave for work so that you can have some uninterrupted alone study time, or you plan some of your study time for after your parents get home in the evening. And again, they can be responsible for that care part and you can be responsible for your own work. If that's not possible, depending on the age of your sibling, you might try something along the lines of, you set them up with a lesson that they're going to work on. Maybe your sibling is working on math. So while your sibling is doing math review, working a problem, maybe you are writing a short answer, because that might be a 15-minute. Like, you work on your math problems, I'll work on my short answer. When the timer dings at 15 minutes, then I'll stop my writing and I'll look at your math problem. And it may mean that you're studying Madison and others in this situation is more distributed, more spread out throughout the day. And that's going to be a challenge. You may also enlist your siblings as study partners with you, that you say, okay, I'm going to help you with your reading homework, and then you're going to listen to me teach you about the Silk Road or whatever it is that you are studying. And you get to review and study by teaching them history content. It may not be what they're supposed to be learning, but it's a way that you could trade that off. It's not a perfect solution, but I think that's maybe a good starting place. If anybody else has advice or ideas for Madison about what's working with young people around in your house, I was trying to do this stream during my children's nap time. They are not sleeping, so we're having just the reality of being interrupted today. And I think that for some of you, that's also going to be your reality. And I want to encourage you to just persevere through it. It's not easy, but it's worthwhile. Just like you all are worth me being here and doing this with you. Any other questions? Please, out of curiosity for everyone. Yeah, is anyone else out there a senior? I can't imagine what this must feel like as a senior, trying to finish strong, get those final AP credits, graduate on time. I know my state, the legislature is getting involved to help seniors graduate. It's, this is real and this is hard. And I love it. Allie's giving a virtual hug to any seniors out there. She's thinking of you too. We're all thinking about you. And really, and at any level, with seniors especially, I want to encourage you to keep reaching out, keep looking for opportunities to get help, get support. Use our Fiveable community to respond in threads to different videos that you might be watching. When you go to Fiveable and that little thing pops up and says, hey, how's your studying going? If you have questions, type in that little box. It's a chat bot initially, but it goes to a real person and you can get some real human interaction, real human responses. And our team that works that tries really hard to get people with expertise answering questions. I know that people are feeling grief about missing school and losing out on things, losing out on sports seasons and music performances and maybe even graduation ceremonies or senior proms. And I'm wanting to say these things out loud because I think hearing the reality is a way for us to know that we're in this together. This is not something you're going through by yourself. And we may not all be feeling it in the same way and going through it the same way, but we are all going through this together and we want to support each other. It's part of the reason I love being part of Fiveable is there's a community of people who care, and we care about you as humans, as people, as much as we care about you as students. And I very much hope that you're feeling that kind of support from your teachers and your schools as well. And if you're not right now, it's probably not because they don't care. It's probably because there are some limitations on what they can and can't offer. And hopefully they'll be able to offer more in the coming days and give you some more of that support and encouragement. And we can't replace the things that we're losing, but we can be together with one another. We can offer that support for one another. So I want to thank everybody who came out to the stream, either live or if you're watching this in replays. Thank you so much for being here, for sticking with this, for going through all of this together. I hope that this was a good reminder of things you already know how to do. And I hope that anything new that you learned is encouraging rather than discouraging, and that it can help you to move forward in creating a self-study plan that's going to help you feel empowered and successful. Because that's really the goal here. So thanks so much, everybody. Come back for streams in all of our different subject areas. If you're in world history, I hope to see you in some of those streams coming up soon. And take care of yourselves. Take care of the people around you. You're awesome out there. Goodbye, everybody.